When my friends and I booked the old mansion on Airbnb for the weekend, we were thrilled at the unbelievable deal we had scored. The photos showed a sprawling century-old estate with ornate woodwork, vintage furnishings, and beautiful grounds. It seemed like the perfect peaceful retreat from our busy lives in the city. If only we had known then what we were walking into. We arrived on a sunny Friday afternoon, the weather still warm for early spring. I stepped out of the car and took in the sights: towering oak trees, a bubbling stone fountain, and the 3-story mansion looming imposingly above it all. As we hauled our bags up the front steps, I ran my hand along the intricate carvings on the doorframe, marveling at the craftsmanship. But when Robbie opened a large wooden door, an icy chill blasted out, cutting through the warm breeze. I shrugged it off, assuming the inside of the old house just took longer to heat up. We picked our rooms and explored the creaky floors and dark corners of the mansion, oohing and eyeing over the historical details like the ornate chandeliers and faded antique furniture. After unpacking, we headed to the sweeping stone patio out back to relax and take in the view of the surrounding woods. But despite the sunny day, I couldn't shake a strange, uneasy feeling, like we were being watched from the dark forest. That night, I was awoken by an eerie sensation like someone was in the room with me. My eyes scanned the shadows, seeing nothing, yet unable to shake the feeling of not being alone. I huddled under the covers, eventually falling into a fitful sleep. The next morning over breakfast, others mentioned feeling cold spots in their rooms overnight, hearing faint whispers, or seeing shapes darting past out of the corners of their eyes. We brushed it off with jokes about the haunted mansion, but I could see the unease lurking behind my friends' smiles. Throughout the day, the paranormal experiences increased. Doors would suddenly slam shut, making us all jump. Lights flickered erratically, even though the electricity was fine. Strange thumps and banging echoed through the quiet halls at odd hours, and there was a constant prickling on the back of my neck, like someone was right behind me. But each time I whipped around, only empty air met my gaze. That next night, though, things got much worse. I was heading back to my room when a faint sobbing sound drifted down the hallway. I followed it to a locked door where the cries grew louder, escalating into agonized wailing. The hair on my arm stood on end as I rushed back to my room and dove under the covers. But sleep did not come easy. The next morning, we decided to dig into the history of this mansion that we were starting to realize we knew nothing about. It didn't take long to unearth the dark secrets of its past. Decades ago, a newlywed couple had moved in. But shortly after, with no warning, the husband had gone insane. In a fit of rage, he murdered his poor wife before turning the gun on himself. Their deaths left permanent scars on this now haunted place. Cold dread washed over me at the realization that their tortured spirits must still be trapped here, unable to move on. That night, we gathered in the living room to try communicating through an old Ouija board left in the house. After asking if any spirits were with us, the planchette slowly crept across the board, spelling out one bone-chilling word: Leave. We begged the spirits to tell us what we could do to help them find peace, but the planchette just repeatedly spelled out Danger. Suddenly needing to get out of that house, we rushed to the front door to make an escape. But no matter how hard we pulled on the handles, the doors refused to budge. Some dark energy was keeping us trapped inside. Exchanging panicked looks, we retreated back into the mansion, unsure of what sinister night awaited us. And we had been right to be afraid. As night fell, an onslaught of sinister supernatural energy was unleashed. Picture frames leapt from the walls, shattering on the floor. Blood-curdling shrieks echoed endlessly through the halls. Apparitions flickered in and out of sight, vanishing when we blinked. No part of the house felt safe. We huddled together in terror, jumping at every bang, crack, and unseen footstep. No one slept that night. We waited anxiously for the sunrise, praying the spirits would release their hold on this place come morning. At the first light of dawn, Robbie cautiously tried the front door again. The handle turned, and the door slowly creaked open. We didn't waste a second scrambling to our cars to escape the madness. To this day, just thinking about that night sends a chill down my spine. The tortured souls trapped in that mansion were not resting peacefully, and they made sure we would not either. I'll never forget the sinister turn that Airbnb weekend took, from a fun getaway to running for our lives. Some doors are better left unopened. When I stumbled upon the Airbnb listing for a seaside villa at an unbelievable price, I immediately booked it for our annual girls' weekend. The photos showed glowing hardwood floors, walls of windows overlooking the crashing ocean waves, and chic minimalist furniture that gave it a calm coastal vibe. It seemed like the ideal backdrop for a weekend of relaxation and reconnection with my best friends from college. The week of our trip, I texted the details to the group chat along with my growing excitement. We were all busy professionals beaten down by stressful city jobs. So having this luxurious escape waiting for us on Friday powered us through the long work days. On the afternoon we headed out of town. The car was buzzing with laughter and singing along to our favorite throwback songs. When we pulled up to the address provided, my excitement turned to confusion. The exterior looked nothing like the listing. Peeling paint, overgrown trees and shrubs, boarded up windows and a dilapidated roof replaced the sleek modern exterior in the photos. I double-checked the address while my friends waited anxiously. This was definitely the right place, though it bore no resemblance to what we rented. Hesitantly, I stepped out of the car and headed to the front door with growing unease. The musty scent of mildew emanated from inside, and I noticed termites crawling up the warped door frame. I slowly turned the handle, revealing an entryway shrouded in darkness. Flipping on my phone's flashlight, I could make out torn wallpaper, cobwebs in every corner, and dust blanketing every surface. My friends and I exchanged uneasy looks as we wandered through the unkempt rooms. The clean white kitchen from the photos was actually grimy and cluttered with rusting appliances from another era. The living room looked nothing like the airy, pristine one advertised online. Tattered, stained upholstery and moth-eaten rugs only added to the eerie atmosphere. "Guys, I think we got scammed," I finally said out loud, voicing our shared realization. None of the restful coastal decor we had expected was anywhere to be found. I felt ashamed I had fallen for such an obvious con and put my friends in this unsettling situation. We tried contacting the host but received automated replies. That's when it hit me. There was no host. The whole listing was fake, intended to lure gullible renters like myself. Night was falling quickly, and we knew we couldn't leave without risking a long drive in unknown territory in total darkness. Despite feeling childish, we dragged the moldy couch cushions onto the bedroom floor to create makeshift beds. No one could relax, instead staring anxiously up at the ceiling fan clicking above us. Eventually exhaustion overtook us, and we fell into a fitful sleep. I jolted awake a few hours later to the unmistakable sounds of footsteps creaking down the hallway, followed by hushed voices. My friends awoke in terrified silence beside me. We were not alone in the decaying villa. Frozen in fear, we listened to the muffled sounds of other people shuffling around the small house. I couldn't make out their words, only hushed whispers and occasional thumping. Were they squatters who had taken over this abandoned building? Or something more sinister? Terrified, my friends and I huddled together in the corner of the dingy bedroom, searching for any kind of makeshift weapon just in case. We kept texting pleading messages to family and friends, but doubted any would go through in this remote area. Trapped and alone, we took turns whispering words of comfort to each other, hoping to calm our pounding hearts. As hours ticked by, we sat frozen, listening to every creak and groan of the decrepit villa. My springs poked through the worn sofa cushion I sat on, but I dare not move. We were completely at the mercy of whoever else was just down the hall. When pale light finally crept in through the moth-eaten curtains, we gathered our bags as quietly as possible. We crept slowly toward the front door, cringing each time the old floorboards groaned under our careful steps. The voices from down the hall had faded, though we had no idea if the intruders were still inside. Our only thought was getting out of that house safely. We drove in stunned silence back to the city, the weekend's plans of fun and relaxation forgotten. Now we just focused on the relief of leaving that unsettling situation. Back home, I contacted Airbnb to report the fraudulent listing, though I doubt they will find the scammers. I hated imagining others lured into booking that same villa, only to find themselves trapped in the decaying ruins with mysterious voices echoing down the hall. In the end, we escaped unharmed, if a bit scarred from that terrifying experience, though we joked about that disastrous trip becoming an annual tradition. I don't think any of us will be booking another rental property for a long time. The photos and reviews truly masked a complete deception, and learning that lesson will stay with me far longer than a relaxing vacation ever could. When my family and I booked that beach house rental online, we were so thrilled. The photos showed a quaint little cottage right on the water, with big bay windows looking out over the shore. The description promised tranquility, relaxation, and family fun. After a stressful year, it seemed like the perfect summer getaway. As we pulled up to the house, our excitement faded. A grim-faced man marched out of the small bungalow next door, yelling at us not to block his driveway. I tried explaining we were renting the beach house, but he cut me off. "Yeah, I know exactly who you people are," he growled. "Partiers and hooligans just here to trash the place. I've seen your kind before." He spat on the ground in disgust before turning to storm back inside. My husband shot me a worried glance as he parked, but said hopefully it was just a grumpy neighbor. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling as we unloaded the car. The kids raced ahead into the charming little cottage, squealing with delight at the beachy decor. Out front, I could hear the angry neighbor slamming things around in his house while glaring out his window at us. That first night, we were jarred awake by a massive crash. We ran outside to find the front window shattered, shards of glass covering the porch. A brick lay among the debris. In the moonlight, I could see the silhouette of the neighbor watching through his curtains before turning off his lights. We spent the next morning sweeping up broken glass while the kids cried, frightened to stay in the house. Every time I tried calling the rental company, I couldn't get through. With no other choice, we boarded up the window as best we could and kept the curtains drawn. I told the kids to stay away from the neighbor's side, though we could hear him muttering curses from his porch whenever we went outside. Over the next few days, things only got worse. He blasted aggressive heavy metal music, the walls and windows pulsing with the noise. In the middle of the night, we'd be jolted awake by him revving his Harley motorcycle outside our bedroom. And every time we left, we'd come back to find new damaged slashed tires, smashed garden gnomes, even dead fish strewn across the back porch. No matter how we tried to avoid him, he always found new ways to torment us. I stopped letting the kids play outside at all. They spent the days cooped up in the house while I peeked out the curtains, my nerves on edge. At night, my husband and I took turns patrolling the house, bolting doors and shutting blinds, alert for any sounds of the increasingly unhinged neighbor. By the second week, I'd reached my breaking point. I started gathering evidence, taking pictures of the vandalism and damaged property. I researched the neighbor and found records of violent disputes with past neighbors and arrests for aggravated assault. When I finally reached the rental manager, they were shocked by what I described. They agreed something had to be done and promised to issue a refund. They also said they planned to begin eviction proceedings against the neighbor, who had been causing problems for others nearby too. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy for the man. He clearly suffered from serious issues with anger and paranoia. But our safety had to come first. We couldn't live like prisoners in our own rental for 2 weeks. On the last day, we loaded up the car cautiously, keeping one eye on the increasingly agitated neighbor. As we pulled away, I breathed a sigh of relief. The vacation wasn't what we had envisioned, but we were just grateful to be escaping without harm. In retrospect, I wish I had trusted my instincts from the start. As soon as I felt that prickle of unease upon arriving, I should have demanded different accommodations. But I let the company's reassurances and my own desire for a perfect getaway cloud my judgment. Now I know to always listen to that inner voice. If something seems dangerous or off, take action right away instead of downplaying it or trying to be polite. Situations can escalate quickly when mental illness and volatility enter the picture. I'm still haunted by what that unhinged man put us through, but I'm thankful we made it back home intact. My protective instincts are stronger than ever when it comes to keeping my family safe, and I know to screen neighborhoods and read reviews meticulously before ever booking another vacation rental. The next guests at that beach cottage will need luck on their side if that lunatic still lives next door. I had been saving up for what felt like forever to finally take my dream trip to New York City. As a solo traveler on a budget, I needed to find affordable accommodations. After a lot of searching online, I came across an Airbnb studio apartment right in Manhattan that looked perfect and cost much less than a hotel. The listing had dozens of glowing 5-star reviews. The host, Eric, seemed friendly and welcoming in our messages back and forth. When he asked for a copy of my ID and credit card for verification purposes, I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too caught up in my excitement for this trip that I had waited so long to take. After a smooth flight, I arrived in NYC and easily found the building for my Airbnb. The apartment was just as nice as it looked online. Eric had left the keys with the doorman like he said. I couldn't believe I was actually here on my own in the bustling Big Apple. I tucked away my luggage, changed clothes, and headed straight out the door ready to explore. My first stop was some light shopping at a few stores near Times Square. I picked out a couple of I Heart My shirts and went to pay with my credit card. Confused, the cashier told me it was declined. I said that couldn't be right and tried a different card with the same result. Starting to get worried, I found a cafe with Wi-Fi and logged into my accounts. My jaw dropped when I saw my 2 main credit cards had thousands of dollars of charges over the past couple of days that I definitely did not make. There were expensive dinners, club charges, Broadway shows, shopping sprees, all at places in New York that I hadn't been yet. With my heart pounding, I quickly logged into my bank account. Just as I feared, almost all of the money I had budgeted for this entire trip was gone. Every account was drained down to pennies. Frantically, I called the bank and credit card companies to report the fraudulent charges, cancel the cards, and try to figure out what happened. They informed me someone had gone on a huge spending spree with my cards at multiple upscale places around New York City. I also learned new cards had been ordered and massive cash withdrawals made in the past 24 hours, leaving my accounts completely empty. I was in shock that so much damage had been done so fast. I rushed back to the Airbnb and grabbed my laptop to assess the situation further. Logging into social media, I was horrified to see posts I absolutely did not write, insulting some of my friends. There were new messages in my inbox I would never have sent. It was clear someone had access to my accounts. It slowly started to dawn on me that whoever drained my bank account likely stole my identity as well. They had enough personal information to access and control my financial accounts and social media profiles. As I frantically changed all of my passwords, I tried to think about who could have done this. Then it hit me. The only person I had shared my ID and credit card with was Eric, the Airbnb host. I felt sick as I realized Eric must have used my identity, along with editing his own reviews, to scam me as part of an elaborate plan. When I tried to call and message him through Airbnb, it said he was unavailable and his profile had been removed. Just like that, any trace of him or the money he stole was gone. Overwhelmed and panicked, I called the police. They took my report and said identity theft happens frequently with Airbnb, but they could do little without knowing Eric's real identity or location. I contacted Airbnb next, but they simply apologized and said hosts are third parties who they couldn't control. I was completely on my own. The next several days of my trip were spent filing claims, adding account freezes, changing login information, and undoing the damage to my online presence. The thief had access to enough of my personal data to impersonate me flawlessly. I had to wipe both my phone and laptop in case spyware had been installed. Exhausted, stressed, and defeated, I walked the streets of New York City I had been so excited to explore, but now could hardly enjoy. My trip was essentially ruined before it even began. I stuck to free museums and attractions, cautiously using only cash. I avoided social media to limit the embarrassment of the fake posts. In the end, I was left to deal with massive financial loss and an enormous invasion of privacy on my own. I learned to never send personal information or IDs to anyone in the future, no matter how legitimate they appear. I now closely monitor all accounts daily for any suspicious activity. What was supposed to be an amazing solo trip turned into my worst nightmare. I returned home wary, jaded, and vowing to one day come back to New York the right way.